your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for listening to the Locked On Wildcats podcast, making this your first listen of the day. With John Schuster, I am merely Mike Luke. All right, Schu, U of A basketball's over, U of A football's over. That means that we're going to talk some NBA and what's going on. Phoenix Suns. Round 2 starts tomorrow. Deandre Ayton's on the Phoenix Suns. They're going to be playing the Dallas Mavericks. What are your initial thoughts of this series?
My initial thoughts is that Ayton is going to be important in this series, and I know you hate comparisons, but I'm going to throw one out there. I know this is very difficult on you. I think this series is going to be a little bit like last year's Denver series, where the team going opposite the Suns more or less has one guy, one great player, but Phoenix is a better team up and down the roster. I think the Suns are going to win this, not in 4, which went viral last year.
Not Suns in 4.
Not Suns in 4, because after a little bit of a skirmish in the Mile High City, but I believe the Suns in 5.
By the way, the guy that got his ass beat, he deserved that 100% in that situation.
Hashtag 100%.
Yeah. Hashtag 100. Hashtag blessed.
I hope he lost a bet somewhere among his friends. And that bet forced him to get a really bad Suns in 4 tattoo that he will have to live with for the rest of his existence. I don't know how you feel in this series, Mike, but I feel like, obviously the issue here is, where does, how healthy is Booker? His first game back, it was okay. It wasn't 100%. It looked like there was a fair amount of rust. But if he gets back into playing shape, it makes you feel a lot better about a relatively well-rounded Phoenix team by comparison. And again, I look at Dallas. I think Dallas obviously has, I think you could favorably argue one of the 3 best. And if you wanted to say the best player in the game, that's all well and good and fine as well. But I think Phoenix is a little bit more balanced and as a result has a chance to be more successful in this series.
Yeah, and you kind of wonder too, because Phoenix can throw bodies at you. So, like, you look at it, and Luka Doncic, probably the best player in the series. But if you're going down the roster, probably the next 4 or 5 are on the Phoenix Suns, which becomes an issue then, especially for a guy that has, he's been around, but he hasn't really been around. What is your initial? So you think Suns in 5, you said?
Yeah. I think so.
Okay. So now the Booker's back, does Ayton go back to getting about 5 shots a game, or what would you see?
Well, I would hope that I would hope they'd be a little bit more well-rounded than that. But it's hard to tell. And I guess as the flow progresses, maybe that's one of the things that depends on what's available, and perhaps Ayton can get a little bit more involved. But if the Suns are more balanced, if you look back at the Pelicans series, and Mike, you've talked about this a lot. You look at these types of things where it's a matchup game. And right. Everything's a matchup game. It's not very complicated to say that. But the Pelicans provided a couple interesting areas that caused problems for the Suns that went just a little bit more deeper than Booker was injured, which is obviously a big deal. And one of those was Phoenix's odd inability to be able to lock down defensive rebounds and as a result give New Orleans second shot opportunities. To me, it feels like they'll be a little bit better than that against Dallas, and if they are, I think that helps. And then if you shoot at a relatively decent percentage, as opposed to the mostly abysmal percentage that Phoenix shot in the first series, I would think if those 2 things improve, I feel like the Suns ought to be in pretty good shape here.
What you're telling me is they need a Built Bar. And so, you look at it, you're getting out physical. What in the world are you going to do? Because this is too late in the season to start hitting the weights hard. You got to think to yourself, gosh, what can I do to get that quick little energy boost? And Built Bar is it. Now, again, some people have gone overboard on this, thinking that Built Bar prevents COVID. It doesn't. But what Built Bar does, what Built Bar does is Built Bar does allow you to recover. It tastes very good. You like the blueberry. I like the blueberry. Built Bar, check it out. So I think I speak for you about Built Bar. Is this correct?
You do. And depending on how my video feed is, and I know most people, listen to this on the audio feed. If my video feed is acting like it looks like on my end, where I've been in freeze frame for about the last 8 minutes, I think my internet needs a Built Bar over the course of this weekend, or at least this broadcast. Hopefully that's not the case. I'm going along with it, but I'm getting a good freeze frame on this end, and I'm going to rush over to my technology to see if the technology needs a little Built Bar to get up to speed.
I'll tell you what, go ahead and do that. You're not freezing at all on this end.
Oh, good. Okay, fantastic.
Yeah,
then
but you are starting to static a little bit here.
All right.
All right. So we'll figure all that out. All right, let's take a quick break. Thanks for keeping it locked on, Wildcats. Are you still frozen?
I'm still frozen, and I'm not a princess.
All right. Well, okay. So now let's the Phoenix Suns.
I've heard of them.
People keep asking me. They're like, "Well, what do you mean that the Phoenix Suns are a cursed franchise?" They are a cursed franchise. I believe that something will happen here, and I don't know what it will be. Now, I thought it was probably going to be Devin Booker early on. I'm like, "Oh, great! He hurts his hamstring, and now he's out for the he's out." Well, he's back, which leads to any other. A plethora amount of possibilities, all of which are negative in my mind. So it'll be interesting to see what exactly plays out there, Schuster.
Okay, query, Mike Luke. Who has asked you why the Suns are a cursed franchise? Because whoever it is hasn't been paying a whole heck of a lot of attention to the history of the Phoenix Suns.
Well, it was also about a 22-year-old with a freshly pressed Chris Paul jersey, which
that's beautiful.
And always a lifelong fan, because when you talk to lifelong Phoenix Suns fans, the first thing that they bring up is Chris Paul is my all-time favorite Sun.
Absolutely.
That's always
the first, without a doubt.
That's always the first thing in the hopper right there. So, again, I'll believe it when I see it. 93 is still – actually, no, 07 is still the one that I – was just so bizarre because injuries happen in basketball. 07 was just the one with Amari Stoudemire where it's like, all right, you can't even really script that one right there. That one was,
and that's the thing, and that's one of the areas that makes it kind of unique for Phoenix. And I know we've talked about this on the podcast and some other platforms before. The rarity in that 07 series is that it wasn't a bad call or it wasn't injuries that cost a team a legitimate championship, but it was the very league that they played in that didn't use common sense in an obvious situation and hurt the wrong team, and as a result allowed San Antonio, which was the team, which with a player on that team that caused the problem. They allowed San Antonio to have the advantage in a series that Phoenix was going to win, and Phoenix was going to get over the hump, and then Phoenix was absolutely going to do exactly what San Antonio did in the finals. That was, and that's what makes that one interesting. To me, there's a lot of weird play here, weird play there, stuff on the field. The Red Sox went through a bunch of cursy things as well. Lots of quote-unquote cursed franchises have. But the fact that the league cost the Suns a championship is a very unique spectacle. Now, if you're frustrated beyond that, you look at the 2 years that you talked about in the early 90s, where they had consecutive 3-1 and 2-0 on the road advantages against a Houston team that won back-to-back titles. In reality, in legitimate reality, the Phoenix Suns should have 3 NBA titles, and up to this point, they still have 0.
All right. BetOnline, if you want to bet against the Suns because of what we just told you, BetOnline is the place that you're going to go to bet against the Suns. Let's take a quick break. Thanks for keeping it locked on, Wildcats. All right, Schu. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about Steve Kerr finally getting the respect he deserves as a very good NBA coach. They won again on Sunday, and so we're going to talk about that then. But for John Schuster, I am Mike Luke. You've been listening to the Locked On Wildcats.